If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. Man, it's a rough year for Letitia James, and it's barely started. She's trying to run for re-election as New York Attorney General, and on Tuesday, she's going to be having a fundraiser scheduled, calling for contributions from $500 all the way up to $18,000 if you got it. Now, while the white right media tries to make this sound like it's crazy, it's actually not. Politicians, especially in New York, as expensive as that place is, they try to get big donations all the time because in these huge political markets like that, you need them. And it's not as if the locals aren't good for it. So let's not be stuck on stupid about that. But while Letitia James is trying to stay in office, seems the orange man is plotting putting her in a prison cell instead. The director of Trump's Federal Housing Finance Agency, Bill Pulte, has referred Letitia James to the Justice Department for criminal prosecution. Now, Bill Pulte is the grandson of William J. Pulte, who is the founder and chairman of Pulte Group, one of the largest home construction and real estate development companies in the U.S. Whenever you see those signs that say Pulte Homes, that's them. So why is the heir to the Pulte home crime family, dynasty, trying to get Letitia James put in the pokey? Because Letitia James successfully had Trump prosecuted and convicted for exaggerating the value of his real estate assets, and she secured a $450 million judgment against him. This would be financially ruinous to the orange man, especially since this conviction took place at the state level, so Trump can't even use his own pardon powers to get himself out from under this judgment. The only thing that saved him was getting back into the White House. So Trump is wanting to get some payback, and he might have found his angle. According to the letter that Pulte sent to the Attorney General, which got immediately given to the media, on August 17, 2023, Ms. James granted Ms. Shamise Thompson Harrison power of attorney to make a Virginia property her principal residence, quote-unquote. See Exhibit A, and on August 30th and 31st, 2023, through her attorney, Ms. James purchased this property in Norfolk, Virginia. In a Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3047 and in mortgage documents, she reaffirmed that this would be her primary residence, despite being a statewide public office holder in the state of New York at that time, and primarily residing in the state of New York. A building permit issued on her New York property on July 15, 2024, lists her New York property as the James residence. At the time of the 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase and mortgage, Ms. James was the sitting Attorney General of New York and is required by law to have her primary residence in the state of New York, even though her mortgage applications list her intent to have the Norfolk, Virginia property as her primary home. It appears Ms. James' property and mortgage-related misrepresentations may have continued to her recent 2023 Norfolk, Virginia property purchase in order to secure a lower interest rate and more favorable loan terms. Now, for those of you who follow the black media, I'm sure you're going, man, doesn't this sound a lot like what happened to Marilyn Mosby? We'll get to her in a minute. But Pulte's letter goes on to say, February 14th, 2021, Ms. Letitia James purchased this 5-family dwelling. Ms. James secured a conforming loan through the Fannie Mae Freddie Mac Form 3033. Conforming loans are only available on 4-unit or less structures. Spanning the last 2 decades, Ms. James has consistently misrepresented the same property as only having 4 units in both building permit applications and numerous mortgage documents and applications. Conforming loans, or Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac-backed mortgages, have favorable rates and terms. Conforming single-family loans are subject to a cap of 4 dwellings per property. A building that exceeds 4 units must be treated as a multifamily property and typically has larger down payment requirements and higher interest rates terms. It appears that Ms. James may have listed the Brooklyn, New York property as 4 units instead of 5 units in order to meet the conforming loan requirements and thus receive better interest rates. Ms. James also appears to have used this same falsification in order to receive mortgage assistance through HAMP, HAMP being the Home Assistance Modification Program. And, just to make it extra odious, Pulte also attached documentation saying that in 1983, Ms. James and her father signed mortgage documents that stated they were husband and wife in order to secure a home mortgage. See Exhibit F. Then, on May 4th, 2000, Ms. James was listed again as husband and wife in documents. So, what this proves is that the Trump administration is using their departments to investigate people going back decades, long before they were in politics or the public eye. This is precisely the kind of blatantly vindictive maneuvers, just the egregiously retaliatory moves that people were accusing Trump of, and here he is proving that he's just as blatant about it as people thought. What this shows is Pulte and his pals didn't just happen to stumble upon this information. They had to dig deep to find this kind of dirt. So that tells you that's what they're doing with their government offices. Interestingly, though, Pulte didn't decide to make the whole father, daughter, husband, wife thing into some sort of grounds for further investigation. In fact, he himself basically admits that, saying while this was a long time ago, it raises serious concerns about the validity of Miss James' representations on mortgage applications. So what that says to me is Bill Pulte knows that even if this father and daughter claiming to be husband and wife thing is true, he knows that there can't be a prosecution, probably because it's past the statute of limitations, or because he feels having used his office to dig this deeply into Letitia James' past would make any sort of criminal action into an obvious malicious prosecution. Otherwise, he would have been telling Pam Bondi, hey, you need to investigate this too. So this is actually a press release meant to be put out to the public. This is all about damaging Letitia James' reputation, and I have no sympathy for her. Want not, waste not, I suppose. Trump is recycling the same playbook that took down another city girl prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby, and just in case it wasn't blatantly clear that this was purely retaliatory, Pulte specifically mentioned Mosby by name and her conviction. And on a side note for what might be in the future for Letitia James, when Marilyn Mosby was being prosecuted, there were some of the usual suspects, the same old suck-ups and shills, who were trying to get her a pardon after her conviction. People like Mushmouth Crump and Angela Rye with lettuce and tomatoes on the side. But Jim Crow Joe wasn't having it. He refused to issue Marilyn Mosby a pardon, though he did make sure to pardon his own drug addict, gun-toting son after he said that he wouldn't pardon him. So if Letitia James winds up being prosecuted and convicted, even if some Democrat gets in there right after Trump, what are the chances that they're going to pardon her? And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't mention Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD, if only in passing, because even though Trump has given him a stay of execution, the long knives are still out for him regardless of how the next mayoral election turns out, because it was the Democrats who began the process of investigating him in the first place. So they're not even being subtle about what's going on. The celebratory air of this letter is meant to make it clear that Trump is evening the score. This is part of the Trump Revenge Tour. Letitia James has given the kind of predictable non-denial denials that you would expect at this kind of development, but it's hard to say how that's going to help her. At the rate things are going, it's probably only a matter of time before poor Letitia has to start an OnlyFans. A lot of these boss bees like Marilyn Mosby and others look like they came straight off the polls, so it ain't nothing for them to go back. But as for Letitia James, I've got zero sympathy for her, and you shouldn't either. She was one of the main people who went out of her way to ignore black people being gunned down in the streets in her state, and instead she decided that she was going to go with the politically correct hysteria about Stop Asian Hate. But this is a woman who made it very clear as far as she was concerned, she understands what the rules of racism are, and she's going to climb the political ladder literally over black people's dead bodies, even though black people were and remain the vast majority of hate crimes victims. No hotline for black victims, no task force for black victims here, because she understands that's exactly what America is based on. It's not based on Asian hate. It's based on and has always been based on anti-black racism. And just like Officer Eric Adams of the NYPD, Letitia James, who bragged about being the state's top cop, she wanted to make it very clear. She understands being able to kill black people with impunity, that's a crucial element of maintaining the racial hierarchy that is this tortured fever dream of a society calling itself America. She understood that, and she wanted to stand for it boldly. She was playing politics with black people's lives. What she thought was that she was going to ingratiate herself with other people and that they would support her. And that being the case, I see no reason for her to be depending on black people now. She decided to bend over backwards to represent only certain people and certainly not black people. Fine. Let those other people who she made it a point to represent stick up for her, and they'll be the only ones. These corrupt and crumbling self-interested Negro misleaders need to be made to pay a heavy price for playing the game of anti-black racism. Letitia James made it a point to say that no one is above the law, and yet the politicians and their rich pals like Trump, Mosby, and James are certainly not under the law like everyone else. Let's not kid ourselves. There's no good guys in this fight. They're all scumbags. All that's happened now is Trump has decided that if he has to be subject to the law, then everyone else has to as well. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Black Mama, Alice Ransom, Richard Griffith, Marcus Pridgeon, and L. Wilson. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.